Welcome to the Arena Decklist podcast. I am Jerry Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb. We are back.
As always, by Brian Gottlieb. I didn't miss a show. You just didn't do one.
We are back after a break. I want to say that it was wonderful and relaxing, but it wasn't. So I don't know. I feel like I should just do the podcast and not take breaks. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I think it doesn't feel like I get a lot of upside from taking a break, mostly because I like doing the podcast. So it's hard for me to really be like, yes, I get the week off. And I get what you're saying. You don't feel like $1 million refreshed, ready to tackle the world. Of course, there's other reasons for that, other things going on that might be stressing you out a little bit, but it doesn't matter because we have so much stuff to cover. We can't even complain about it today. There's too many things to talk about. We won't even find room to badmouth this stuff. It's too dense.
Yeah. I guess like even last week, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but we can always find something.
It was a slower week for sure. We're in a really weird time right now where we had like a delayed release and standard is as lame duck as it could possibly be. And there's actual blackouts for tournaments. So there's no tournaments anyone's prepping for. And I don't know. It's been weird.
Also, Arena was, it got updated on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll play some Arena, and like do some drafting, like clean out my decks in preparation for Historic Horizons. And it was just like super extended downtime. And I just eventually gave up.
It was a long one. I did get my prep work done, though. I cleaned out all my decks and was ready to go for today, where we got finally Jumpstart Historic Horizons after a very long extended wait. Yeah, so got to mess around with that for a little bit. I imagine that we'll have more to talk about in regards to that next week, because we'll have a whole lot of time to actually play and watch matches versus like, all right, try and cram in as many matches as you can in 4 hours or whatever. As it turns out, matches of Magic are kind of long. They take a while. Also, you have to like balance your wild cards. Like, what do I want to explore first? Because I definitely need to buy more wild cards at this point. I have used my entire stash on Historic Horizons, even though, like we said, pretty fair release. I don't think they went overboard in requiring a completely new collection or anything like that. But still, you got to have those wild cards.
So I made a tweet, which I haven't really been doing lately. It was just the screenshot that I sent you of me being out of wild cards.
Felt it in my soul. Just
some of the replies are like, spend money, idiot. I was like, yeah, thanks.
Hadn't considered that. Thank you.
But so normally I would just send that to you, and I recognize that it's the thing that would make a fine tweet, but I don't tweet it. And this time I did because they monetize Twitter now, but I can't enable monetization on my page. Like just in case, like someone wants to give me $10, I'm not going to say no or whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get it, I had to tweet like 25 times in 30 days.
So you're trying to get up to that threshold now. I might not hit it still. I could certainly farm it. Andrew told me to just post cat pictures, which is smart. Okay. Yeah, that's ahead of the game. I did meet the requirements for monetization. So get ready to pay me for those tweets any day now. I don't even understand how I would use that. Like, seriously, is someone going to pay to see, excuse me, a specific brand of my tweets? What are you supposed to do with the monetization?
I don't know exactly what it entails, but I don't know. I'm sure instead of like posting a sideboarding guide on Patreon or something, you could just like lock it behind a tweet. And I would hope that they make it as easy as possible for people to spend money. It's just like 2 clicks and like you can see the thing versus like having to spend 5 minutes filling out, your e-wallet or information or whatever. So like I could see that as being potentially a thing, or, maybe you just post your feed pics or whatever. I don't know.
All feed pics are now behind a paywall. Sorry, everyone who has been following me only for that, but it's gonna start costing you to see these beautiful puppies.
It's not free. That's free. good wholesome content right there. Anyway, right. So yeah, I made a tweet. I don't have a lot of wild cards. Thank God that Dragon's Rage Channeler and Unholy Heat are commons, or like common uncommon. It just it makes me so happy because it's been so long since there was something like that where you could just point to it and be like, this is like a budgety thing that you can do. And it slots into like a lot of your old decks too. So, you ever did Phoenix, you did Rakdos stuff, boom, yep. There you go.
It does, and it spawns so many new packages. I have plenty to say about those two cards, which where most of my success came from today. I worked on some other stuff, but we'll go over all that. We'll give the skinny on our few hours we got in with Historic Horizons in just a bit.
So, last Thursday? No, 2 days ago. It was Tuesday also when Arena was there. Yeah. I slept through this. I didn't actually watch this because, I go to bed at 6 a.m. or whatever. So Magic had a showcase for 2021. And obviously there was a lot of people who were like, oh, what is this going to be about? Is it going to be about like organized play or any of that stuff? And it's like, no, it's just about secret layers, man. What do you think it was going to be about?
I don't know why anyone got their hopes up for organized play. I don't think that's ever what these have been about. And the only part of it that was a little discordant with me was the very first thing they spoke about on the show. I know you didn't watch it, so I'll tell you this. Maybe you're hearing it for the first time. Basically, the first words out of the host's mouth was, paper play is back. And that was the big exciting point. So that was a yikes. They made sure to temper things a little bit, saying respect your local health guidelines, which if you've seen pictures of Magic players, nobody does. And
also some of the local health guidelines are not smart.
Yeah, they're bad guidelines. So there's that whole thing going on. But I think that was the thing that maybe got me wondering, are they going to put forth some kind of announcement? But no, there's a little bit of talk about store championships and like commander events in store, which is fine if that's what you're here for. I like store championships. I'm not trying to be negative about that, but nothing really of the Pro Tour or GP type level.
No, that stuff is great, but also, I don't know, to me, like paper play is equated to like Grand Prix and even Command Fests and stuff like that. So for them to be like, oh, it's back, it's like, well, the it that I think of is not back, right? And also, a form, part of what we're talking about is back. And I know that obviously that's a very, very important part of the ecosystem. And, for people who are just like stoked to be able to go out and battle, I'm very happy for them. Yep. And I'm not going to do it yet because things are bad, but we'll see. There's good. I have a bunch of decks built, that's basically what I did when MH2 came out, was like sit around and build decks, goldfish, order some cards, stuff I didn't have. So
are they outdated at this point, or?
They are, but like I could update them very easily,
Yep.
I bought all the cards that were very good, I think, and then if I wanted to get frisky and play like some tier 2 or tier 3 stuff, like then I would probably have to buy stuff, but whatever.
Yeah,
I guess I don't have Ragavans. I don't have Ragavans because they were super expensive.
And they continue to be expensive. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know what my plan was with that. It was like, I don't know. I guess I'll just wait it out. Maybe thought I would like draft. Maybe I doubt that, but I thought maybe I would be able to draft at some point, and that could take some of the pressure off if I were lucky enough to open one. But
some point we have to revisit all of these limited formats that we never really got to do, right? Like there's
I want to do some time spiral with people too.
Yeah, some kind of rewind would be sweet. Maybe we take that upon ourselves and we just do it for us and some of our closest friends and make that happen. Because I don't think there'll be a formal thing. It's going to be tough to get that together. But there's kind of like this weird lost year and a half of limited play that's just gone.
Yeah. There's not a ton that I'm excited to actually play with, but definitely Time Spiral and MH2.
With you.
Word. So anything else that was in the video that does not show up in this article that you know of? Catch me up.
No, I think this article basically sums up everything else. There is some back and forth and a little bit more clarification in some instances, but for the most part, this article will tell you what happened. You didn't miss all that much.
Okay. So Secret Lairs, upcoming sets, Universes Beyond stuff. They talked about the MTG Arena update, which is, just it's live now. It's happening. And Magic on Netflix. Did they mention that the Russo brothers dropped out for some reason that we don't know of?
Did not come up, and I didn't even know that until you
Weird.
said that right now. So
Oh, okay, yeah. So I don't know if that's like this project is going to be worse, or it was so bad that they left, or maybe they just get like double, triple booked or whatever. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, that stuff is pretty common. So I wouldn't read too much into it without more information. But there was no clip of the show. There was some like concept art and really no solid information to go on.
Okay. So these secret layers, have you looked at them?
The newest ones I've looked at, but
yeah. So the Kamigawa one.
Yeah, I have seen that. I have seen the Out of Time one, which I'm not going to order a secret layer. I've drawn a line in the sand. I'm never going to order them. That is as close as I've come, though. I really like the Out of Time one. If you haven't seen this is Planeswalkers done in like old style with old borders and super confusing rules text and no proper templating. And they're exactly my kind of stupid. Like, I really like them. But I don't know. Maybe someday I'll trade for these cards, but I'm not going to purchase the secret layer. I'm not breaking my secret layer streak of never having purchased one.
Yeah, I've never purchased one either. But the Kamigawa ones look cool. I think the art style is awesome, but they do not make for good Magic cards.
Well, that's the problem I run into with the secret layer stuff is like I want them to still look like Magic cards. And I think, again, the Out of Time drop does a very good job of that. They just look like old Magic cards. But your point about Kamigawa is fair. It's weird to see Magic cards look like this.
Yeah, but the art is super dope, and I do love that. But definitely not going to order any Heartless Hidetsugas. I'm just not going to.
Not a lot of use for those, huh?
No, not too much. Innistrad Midnight Hunt previews start Thursday, September 2nd. So, yeah, we'll be able to talk about some of those cards. Hopefully there's like a pretty big dump of cards. That would be nice. The last one was like 6 or something.
Six really good cards.
We'll get a little bit more.
6 really good
they were
cards,
all really good.
Hopefully we get something along those lines for next week's show and we can talk some more Innistrad. That'll be exciting.
And then Crimson Vow stuff. It's weird to me that they keep, I don't know, doing like news of this alongside Midnight Hunts. Like they've never done that for
like a block.
Even when it was like, Zendikar into World Week, I guess that was like the norm, right? But like now, since these two sets are connected, they just want to make sure that people know that, I guess.
Yeah, and they're even going a little further with the double feature stuff. Do you know what that is?
I saw it and skimmed it.
Okay.
It's like both sets for drafting.
Yeah, both sets for drafting in the same pack. And I think like maybe some other special treatments in there, just like as far as alternate arts and things like that. So really leaning into the idea of this as sort of return to block. And I like it. I would like to see more block work. Honestly, I think when the shift was made away from the block structure to single sets, I was pretty happy about it. I felt like they were often getting trapped by the block structure and, third set problem where they were just always flops. And maybe the answer was not to just murder the blocks. Maybe it was to go down to 2 sets for a block and get a little bit of thematic consistency and then go ahead and leave. And it seems like they're dabbling in a bit of that. So if they return to that full time, it wouldn't upset me at all. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird issues when you just do single sets, right? It's like really difficult to make the mechanics tie together in terms of standard, right?
Also, I think draft has suffered for it. Like, it's interesting to have draft formats that involve multiple packs, I think.
Yeah, because before it was like, okay, there's Champions of Kamigawa, you draft 3 of that, you get used to it. Then it's like Champions, Betrayers.
Yep.
So it's not like you have to relearn everything. It's just like mostly kind of the same thing with a twist. And yeah, trying to go from, like Throne into Zendikar into Korea and, whatever. That's probably not the right order of sets, but.
Yeah, I think the ideal way to do that is like 3 of the quote unquote core set. So like you do your 3 champions and then the next one is 2 betrayers, 1 champions and build your limited formats like that. And I think that's a really cool way to do it.
Yeah, no, I like that too. But I definitely agree with what you're saying. And when you just get to staple like the two Innistrad sets together, I'm sure it makes things like a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm interested to see how that draft format plays. And if we get a look at it on Arena, I have to assume it'll come to Arena. That seems like a pretty easy transition.
Yeah. Upcoming releases, new Kamigawa set, Streets of New Capenna, Dominaria United, and the Brothers War. Any thoughts on this stuff?
The Kamigawa flavor looks fresh. I like the idea of going into the future with Kamigawa and doing some cyberpunk type stuff. I know it's pushing the boundaries of Magic, but I would rather push it in this fashion where it's still tied to the past than push it in some of the fashions we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this podcast. So having seen like the first art from this set looks really, really cool. Return to Dominaria. It's all about the execution on these things, right? Like Dominaria United and the Brothers War. It's all about how you do it, what kind of classic callbacks you have. They generally are good at this stuff. I think they do a good job in the Modern Horizons set. They did a really good job with the original Dominaria. So I'm excited for those two sets. As far as Streets of New Capenna, I have no real expectations. It could either be a home run or a flop, and that's what happens when you head to a new plane. So I am looking forward to seeing what's offered there.
So I'm looking at this Kamigawa art, and did you realize that there's like a robot raccoon?
Oh, not only did I realize it, I tweeted it immediately. I isolated that portion of the art. It's like an origami robot raccoon that's on the shoulder of the character featured, and it is incredible.
This is like my fourth time looking at the art, and it's the first time I noticed it.
Oh, yeah.
I also think that I don't have notifications for anything, right? Like anything on my phone, because it would just be too much, right?
Of course.
But I think that I should probably set up notifications for your stuff because I just never see when you tweet. Twitter just doesn't allow me to do that.
I don't recommend that. I don't enjoy myself on Twitter, if I'm being frank, and I wouldn't want to subject.
Yeah, but maybe I enjoy you on Twitter, Brian.
That's possible. That's possible. But I understand the value of Twitter as a platform. If it was not important to my career, I would have given it up a long time ago, quite frankly.
Well, I don't tweet, and I don't want to say my career is good or whatever, but like I'm still here technically, right? Yeah, things aren't exactly trending upward, but I don't know that's my fault or my lack of Twitter usage's fault. But maybe they're linked. Who knows?
So if you want to look at spots where my engagement is higher than it has been in the past, the only sphere that I'm really succeeding in is Twitter. I think fewer people listen to our podcast. I think fewer people read my articles. But on Twitter, the people are still there. So for whatever reason, I've figured out that platform. Maybe the monetization is where my future's at. This is just me. I'm a professional tweeter now. This is what I'm destined to do.
The thought of that never even crossed my mind, like a professional Twitterer. But I like it. I like the sound of that.
It's got to be once there's monetization, it's got to be real, right? There's got to be some way to do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's just enough people that are like, if you like my posts, go to my Patreon or my Ko-fi or Coffee, whatever the website is, how it's pronounced, stuff like that. It's like, this is just direct. And again, I hope they make it really easy so those people can just get paid. I think that'd be great.
Ideally.
So with this Kamigawa stuff, it's funny to me that on the AMA episode, we talked about like cyberpunky type stuff. And, yeah, this kind of fits the bill, so I'm interested. It's a dramatic shift for me because they've never done anything like this before.
Right.
Like in my mind, it's like, yes, there's the multiverse, but like this is all the same timeline. But like clearly, it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? Like you can just do a set of whatever the hell you want, and this is a way for them to take something that they've already built on and expand on it, make it cooler. So I don't know. This is like one of those things where it's like, it could be really, really awesome. And I don't know. I'm excited to see how good of a job they do, I suppose.
I think it's got a lot of potential, and it was the way to do Kamigawa again. That's the problem with Kamigawa, right? It does have all these problems. And despite being a horrific selling set, it does have a spot of fondness in the hearts of players who were around for that era. For whatever reason, it just resonated with a bunch of people. And I am happy to see them at least take a shot at it. Obviously, we don't know if it's going to work, but first images are pretty exciting, I think.
Streets is mentioned as like being run by 3-color demon crime families.
Yeah, this one might even be weirder than the cyberpunk of Kamigawa.
I don't know if it's just like, okay, yeah, like this is the whatever crime family that is kind of in Sultai colors or Naya. I don't know if it's Shard or Wedge or whatever, but it doesn't explicitly say that it's like here are like some tricolor cards, right? So it could just be like, here's some green black stuff and some blue black stuff, and like we just say that it's this or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like I'm basically, if it is a gold set, I'm down. I'm down for any gold set.
I also just like uncorking the creativity a little bit because, like I said, if all bets are off, I'd rather do it in a way that still references the core of Magic. And I think, based on what they've shown thus far, they are very much of the same goal. They want it to feel like Magic, but in a new, fresh way. And that is appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with the Kamigawa set. Although, you know, same thing with Streets. It's just like it could be hit or miss. Like you don't know, but the creative and R&D for the most part, like with the egregious outliers aside, you know, just like you take Omnath out of Zendikar or whatever, and it's like a really good set, right? Yep. So I don't know. I have faith, basically, is what I'm getting
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think Magic, the issues with Magic over the past couple of years have been issues of mistakes and just outlier mistakes, not wholesale design philosophy mistakes. It's just pushing too far in some spots, and nothing has really been wrong as far as flavor or as far as what they're attempting to do. If they have that under control, then I'm all for these things.
I guess it should be noted too that things have certainly felt like they've been powered down in terms of standard, right? And I would imagine that would continue.
Oh, no question. I mean, Strixhaven D&D, those are dramatic drop-offs, and rightfully so. And I think still two sets that appealed to people. You know, they didn't have the standard impact you might want, but as far as did people like the themes, were they excited about the cards? I think the answer was a pretty resounding yes for both those sets. Agree.
As far as like Dominaria and Brothers War, it's so far out, you know, like,
yeah.
I guess these were things that were, they just made up like a big part of the Magic universe for when I started playing Magic. But for whatever reason, like this stuff doesn't resonate with me.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
You just didn't have interest in that story, or you don't like the way they call back to it, or what's your beef?
I think the callbacks have been fine, I guess. But yeah, just like the story, like I want to be interested in like the fantasy story aspect of things, because a lot of the content I consume is related to that stuff, right? It would be awesome if like, oh, Magic story also happens to be really good or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Dominaria stuff wasn't really that to me at that time, as far as like, you know, maybe you could say like, okay, here's like the PowerPoint of the story and like, this is why it's like technically good. But then it's like, you try and read the books or whatever, and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
So,
well, here's a chance to try it again. We'll see if they can correct some of those past mistakes. And
it could be good. It could certainly turn me around. That would be fine. That would be cool. But I am far more interested for like Innistrad stuff is like a B, but like Kamigawa Streets, it's like, yeah, those could end up being A's, and then the Dominaria stuff is like, whatever, C or D. I'm not super excited.
Well, we agree that Kamigawa is at the top of my chart. I am very interested to see what they do there.
There's a lot at stake, which makes it interesting.
You think in terms of kind of redeeming that plane as far as an important part of Magic history, or just, you know, turning the corner to a new era? Why do you think there's so much more at stake for Kamigawa?
I mean, that's part of it. It's like they're trying two new things, which is like same plane forward in time, right? And new setting, which they have not really done anything cyberpunky in Magic. And you have the expectations of all the Kamigawa fans, right? So it's just like all of these things where it's like, if they do this well, we will probably see more of it. right? And if it goes poorly, they will probably stop doing it. So
yeah,
a lot at stake.
okay,
That's it. Overall, I mean, I guess there's like some other stuff in here, like Infinity, some Double Masters,
yeah,
some
4 more
Jumpstart
sets. What are you?
stuff.
You're not hyped for Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate? Going back to the D&D plane, I mean, I'm down for that. Obviously, this isn't a product made for me. I'm not going to be drafting any Commander Legends, I don't think, but I'm excited that they're trying to do more with D&D. I know it's a really rich world and one that people really care for, so that's cool. The other stuff I said when Jumpstart premiered, I think it's a brilliant idea, a great thing for Magic, but it got kind of lost in the pandemic shuffle. It wasn't like we were all carrying packs of Jumpstart around and battling between rounds, but I could see that being a reality. So, and I'm sure
I mean, it's great that they just don't care. They're just like, yeah, full speed ahead, let's go. Like they know that this will be good.
Yeah,
if things ever
it's a brilliant
get back to
idea.
normal, right?
It really is a brilliant idea. So I hope it gets a fair shake in 2022. I don't know if I believe it will, but I am hopeful.
And then we have some Lord of the Rings, some Warhammer.
Yeah, so
neither was really my jam.
This is the spot where I think things unraveled a little bit for me. We talked about this before, and we were mostly on board with it. When they first did the Warhammer Lord of the Rings announcement, I think we were both, I would say medium. I don't think we were over the moon. When they said that Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth is a modern legal set, that is where it just didn't hit for me. Like, I was okay with Legacy being this nonsense home, and Rick is there and all the strange commander cards, but now I need to keep track of the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth set and understand how it impacts modern. And the idea of casting Gandalf next to whatever, Tarmogoyf, it's weird. And maybe I'll get used to it in time, but here's the thing. You do this once and you don't stop. Like, once you've crossed this line, you're in. You're going to be doing this stuff, and that is abundantly clear with the secret layer stuff they intend to be doing with Universes Beyond, because I mean, this is just as cash grabby as you can get. And I don't care if you want cash grab.
I think that's fine.
I mostly do too. Mostly. But
I think it's fine, but yeah, putting it into like modern and historic, I guess, too, is again, a lot at stake, right? So we'll see.
A lot at stake. I bristle at the idea. And then, you've seen the posts on Twitter, I'm sure, where people talk about the future of Magic, and it's just like Mayor McCheese counters your whatever from Fortnite. And like, it's a little scary, because you could start to see all that is this idea carried forward. And if you do this for long enough, that is a reality. That is what things will happen. And like, the Street Fighter cards are mechanically unique. So now Chun-Li is a part of Magic. And I don't know, man. I know a lot of people are going to be excited about this, and I am not of the burn it all down mentality. Everything is ruined. Things will never be the same. I think it's dumb. I understand why we're doing it. I'm disappointed that we're doing it. And it makes Magic lose a little bit of its luster to me, but it's going to make Magic a ton of money. And what I would say in the past is, good, make Magic money, and that means eventually it comes back to us, the competitive and franchise players who have been here forever, who have proven our love for the game, and who have always had the Pro Tour to lean on. But now that's
trickle down Magic organized play.
There's no trickle down anymore, and we know that. So this is just money to pad stockholders' pockets and make those CEO bonuses a little bigger. I mean, I have Hasbro stock, so okay, I guess that's how I can be excited about the Fortnite collaboration, is that my
How much do you have?
Probably go up. I'm not going to disclose that. I don't think that's a question that I should answer. But not enough that it's going to blunt the pain of having to play with Fortnite cards, is how I've landed.
Yeah, I didn't want like an exact number, but if it's just like, oh, I bought like 3 shares or whatever, or if it's like, I have a decent amount, I think that is interesting. It's like
it's in the our range.
World.
How about that? So it's not a meaningful amount, but it's an investment in a company that has a product that's near and dear to my heart.
That's a lot. It is funny. Like I get it. I think we all feel the same way, where it's like, Wizards is doing very well, but then for those of us who are very, like tournament organized play focused, it's just like our world is burning down.
Yes.
And it's just like
rapidly.
Yeah.
It's just like pouring gasoline on the fire.
Right. Let me read you this passage too.
Please do.
Well, the set isn't focused on modern, like a Modern Horizon set might be. We wanted to give as many players the opportunity to play with these cards and enjoy them.
Why isn't it a standard set then? Right?
I'm
That's how you give
sure,
as many players as possible the way to play with it.
Yes. Also, I'm pretty sure that like if they wanted to play with the cards, they would figure out a way to play with the cards, right? There's like a million different formats. You could obviously draft a set, whatever. It's just like putting that in as a justification I just hate it so much. I hate it.
It feels like corporate speak, and that is a lot of what these announcements are. A lot of what the statistics we get coming from Magic are, and
they're like, hey, I know that you're going to read this announcement and think that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
that's because it doesn't. We want to make,
but we gotta say it. We just have to.
Yeah, Gandalf is a mythic. He's going to be dope as hell. You're going to need like 4 of them for your control deck.
Definitely,
that's the only thing that's going to matter. You thought Jace the Mind Sculptor was good. No thanks. Not even close to good enough.
Yeah, and Hobbit aggro, very important part of the modern format going forward. So,
yeah, naturally. Anyway, Warhammer, you got any stake in that?
No, I have really no opinion. I've read the Warhammer rulebook. Miniature gaming is not for me. It's a little too finicky, and I don't have anything really against the brand. I just don't like the mechanics of it. The whole measuring and all that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Former roommate was trying to tell me about this game that he was playing, and it's like the game concept is interesting, the mechanics are interesting, and I'm like, wait, how do you do this? And he's like, well, you bust out a tape measure, obviously.
Yep. A lot of tape measuring.
I'm just like, come on. That to me is just so ridiculous, but you do what you got to do.
So you've seen me hold Magic cards before, and I want you to picture me leaning over this crowded battlefield trying to move my tape measure around, and it just doesn't appeal to me. As far as the Warhammer lore, I know people who are into it are really into it. It is a passionate fan base and is probably going to introduce some new people to Magic, which is the goal of all this stuff. So it's not any more egregious than anything else going on.
So it's weird because I really enjoy tactics type of games, just like you move on this grid with squares, whatever. And that's effectively what the tape measure thing is, except like the squares are, you just have infinite of them, right?
But it's a million times more inefficient. That's my whole problem with it, is like,
right. So I'm just like, isn't there a better way to do this?
Right. There is playing the tactics games. That's the whole problem with it for me, is that like, I recognize that this thing exists, but I just think the video game versions of it are better. And I understand that's not going to be everyone's opinion. And some people appreciate the infinite squares of movement, but that's fine. I'm good on that. I'd rather just let the computer handle it and tell me how far I can move.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of my whole thing with it. So yeah, whatever. Bust out your tape measure if you want to. It just seems like that shouldn't be necessary, but it's what it is, I guess. All right, what has been your involvement with Historic Horizon so far?
Well, I opened up my laptop this morning. I looked at how many wild cards I had. I had a decent amount. I cracked all the packs that were left in my account so I could get any other pieces, and I got to building decks. Really, my starting point for today was I want to look at Vesperlark stuff. I want to look at this historic exclusive mechanic of the perpetual shrinking via Davriel's Withering, and see if this is as abusable as it reads on its face. And that was step one.
Davriel's Withering gives a thing minus a power permanently, which makes Vesperlark able to return itself.
Yes.
Which then creates infinite loop with blood arches and stuff. I've already seen a lot of people that are just like, what's that? So I feel like, it's day 0, right? So might as well explain it again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It feels like a potential Splinter Twin for this format. It's just a very clean combo that plays some cards that you're not super disappointed about. In particular, Davriel's Withering, I think, is a good removal spell in the format. It gets to most of what you want to get to. It does -1, -2. So, it's killing Srem, it's killing small Dragon's Rage channelers. It's just doing a good job picking off the essential things in the format. So I'm fine with it for the most part. Phoenix is another one. Bad. Killing Phoenix forever is a big deal.
Yes. So you built these decks. How much did you play with them, and did you get any draws?
I did not get any draws, mostly because if I was in that position, I would have just conceded. My goal was to just play as much as possible, learn as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So I wasn't going to click through the things millions of times. And even if my opponents made me click through a particularly long loop, I would just concede in that spot and be like, okay,
well, so my question was, I want to know how the client actually interacts when it's a draw, when you literally have nothing else to target.
That I don't know. I can't answer that for you.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. So
yeah, that's interesting. I will do some research on that and try and figure that out. But was not part of my experience today. It was just learn as much as possible, build as many decks as possible. And what's interesting about the Vesperlark combo is that it fits in a lot of shells, a lot of shells with very reasonable Magic cards. And I guess it's time that I get to the conclusion of this experiment. I'm not actually sure it's good, which is weird because I really had very high expectations. And it's also
that's
weird
the opposite of what I've seen.
It's also weird because I can usually be like, I am sure this is good, or I am sure this is not good. I'm very quick at being able to get to a place, and I'm not there with this particular setup. It's possible I'm just building my decks really wrong, because Blood Artist is a real liability to have in your deck. And the most success I have found is when I'm able to make the combo piece alongside Vesperlark just a good card on its own.
Right.
A zombies build has been probably my best combo Vesperlark deck because
love it.
Yeah, I posted a list over on Twitter, so you can check it out.
Yeah, obviously I didn't see it, Brian. Obviously I didn't see it.
You'll have to go and search for it. But really leveraging the power of the Undead Augur, the card advantage zombie. If you don't know that one, it's BB 2/2 zombie. Whenever it or another zombie dies, you lose a life and draw a card. You also have zombie exclusive Blood Artist effects. So there's Corpse Knight. There's also, what is it? Wayward Servant? Is that the other one? Or Wayward Undead or something like that? The black-white one?
I think it's Servant.
Yeah, I think you're right. But there's a lot of zombie specific things you can do. And then you also get access to a secondary combo with the, I think it's M19 Liliana? ? And
Liliana Untouched by Death.
Liliana Untouched by Death. And then there is also the combo with Shambling Ghast and Liliana Untouched by Death. Minuses for 3. You can cast zombies from your graveyard this turn. If you are able to perpetually minus on your Shambling Ghast, there is another thing you can bring back over and over because it pays for itself every time. So all of this stuff.
This looks
together,
good. I'm looking at your list right now. It looks really good.
It's not bad. I mean, it has a secondary plan. If you want to beef about it, the real issue is that all of these bodies suck. None of them matter. And I don't think you can go as far as playing zombie lords to try and make them relevant because they're just going to stay irrelevant anyway. What I've experimented with a little bit is Diregraph Colossus. So you are able to just make some big bodies, particularly in sideboarded games. I think that's a viable strategy, but you really don't have a great B plan beatdown type deal going on. You do have longevity. You draw a lot of cards. You have a lot of sticking power, but you are pretty reliant on eventually landing that Vesperlark combo with this particular setup.
What if you played 2 Return to the Ranks?
Interesting. I think Return to the Ranks was the next thing I was going to experiment with. I was more trying to stay fair, but hybridizing is really where this combo is going to shine because it in and of itself is just, it's a little bit too unreliable, a little bit too easy to disrupt, honestly. And that's going to bring me to another point that I really, really felt today is that it's time for graveyard hate. Like, don't let graveyards go unchecked at this point. There should be Soul Guide Lanterns and Relic of Progenituses and Rest in Peace all over the historic format right now. Because not only does this combo exist, in main deck, absolutely.
Main deck.
Yep. Not only is there this combo, but Dragon Rage Channeler is a hell of a Magic card. There's also, just going back to the old format, there's Mizzix Mastery stuff and all kinds of stuff that's happening from the graveyard. So I agree 100%. Main deck graveyard hate is the order of business right now.
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, I wrote an article about Dragon's Rage Channeler and built a bunch of decks with it. The deck that I thought was the weakest was Mono Red Phoenix. And so, load up that deck, play it. Opponent plays a main deck Soul Guide Lantern, and it's just like, damn, that's good. Can't beat it. Can't beat it in a million years. And I'm just not even mad because it's just really good right now. And this is like in bronze. Just like, yeah, heads up opponent.
Yep.
It was great.
No, it's so important. And that's also affecting we're going to get to Dragon's Rage Channeler, but it's affecting how I'm building my Dragon's Rage Channeler decks as well. I think you need to be cognizant that you should expect your graveyard to be closed off to you at some point.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I mostly did that with Phoenix and just trying to have like the Sprite Dragons instead of more graveyard reliant things, and Crackling Drakes after sideboarding and stuff like that.
That's a good one. Young Pyromancers more than I would usually play. Yeah,
and once I switched to Is It Phoenix and like got Rest in Peace and just like didn't care, and I think being cognizant of that, building your decks like that. So like Stitcher Supplier, going all in on that with like Croxa.
Horrible.
Which is a tweet of yours that I saw because someone linked me to it.
There you go.
Bad plan. Just also you don't even need Stitcher Supplier anymore. You just don't. You have Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of my opponents that I faced who were playing Dragon Rage Channeler were doing the whole Croxa Stitcher Supplier, and I was like, please stop doing this. It's just not. It's not correct. You need to play real cards in the historic format. It's getting very powerful. Stitcher Supplier was fine in the format when payoffs were a little bit better and the format was a little bit less powerful. At this point, though, that's not the way you want to build your DRC decks. You
also just didn't have enough cards that you wanted to play in a lot of instances. But now we have Thoughtseize and Inquisition. We have Unholy Heat in addition to the black 1 mana removal. We have a ton of different threats we can play. Like we have too much, right? So Stitcher Supplier, not a powerful Magic card, trying to lick and stick that with Village Rites when your mana base is super awkward too. Like trying to put together like this BB combination in your deck that should at least be playing DRC, right?
Yep.
Is not the best idea. So yeah, Stitcher Supplier out. Bye. It's gone.
Let's wrap back around to these Davriel's Withering decks, if you don't mind.
Yes.
There's a few other things I worked on I want to talk about. Like I said, most of my conclusion was that you need to have other plans going on. And so the first thing I did was just build the Abzan deck that you and I talked about a few weeks ago, where you're just a Bolas's Citadel deck that also has this Vesperlark combo built into it. And all your pieces that are important, things like Prosperous Innkeeper, Blood Artist, they can all be rebought with your Vesperlark, and you just eventually lead to Bolas's Citadel, kill them that way, or you set up your Vesperlark combo. Bolas's Citadel feels a bit too slow for Historic right now, given how far the power level has pushed. It's also exploitable by some of the same hate cards. Things like Grafdigger's Cage can certainly be problematic, and there should be more of those around as well. So my first experience with that deck was very underwhelming. I just felt like rather than having this Vesperlark combo, which is pretty clean and has utility in other spots, I would have, if I really want to do Bolas's Citadel stuff, I would just lean into that more, not mess around with the Vesperlark Davriel's Withering spot, because the problem is once you start playing Davriel's Withering, you're up right against the edge of a viable Collected Company deck. And I think you have to give up, or at least I have to give up Collected Companies when I'm trying to slot in the Vesperlark combo.
So when you were like, well, I played this Vesperlark stuff, I don't think it's good enough. Everyone else that I've seen has been like, yo, this is my busted Vesperlark deck. All their decks have Collected Company in them. And I assumed that very few of your decks would have that card. And maybe zero, but definitely very few.
I built with it. It was in my first list of Abzan, but I mean, how many creatures are they playing in their Collected Company decks? Did they not have Citadel when they had these setups?
Yeah, it was just Withering Company and creatures.
Okay. Yeah, I could see a version of that works. I mean, you have stuff like Fauna Shaman for a little bit more consistency.
Yeah, Yo Man had Fauna Shaman.
That seems completely respectable. So I will have to take a look at that version. I thought the hybrid combo with Bolus to Citadel would have a little bit more appeal, but giving up Collected Company, no bueno. I agree. Collected Company is the way to go if you're trying to set up this type of creature stuff in the Abzan colors and leverage Prosperous Innkeeper for a source of quote unquote infinite life.
Yeah, I think Citadel is fine in theory, but it only ends up actually being good in certain matchups because with Dragon's Rage Channeler, the format is a lot more aggressive. Not just like people are playing like more creature decks in general, but also their clocks are quicker. And if you're doing Vesperlark stuff, especially if you're doing Collected Company stuff, you don't have a lot of slots for like Graveyard Hate to like slow them down or anything, or a bunch of spot removal, you know? Maybe there's a way that you can tailor that with different creatures, you know? But I'm even hard pressed to think about like what those creatures would be. I guess you could just do like a bunch of Skyclave apparitions or something and just try and do that.
Yeah, a little mid-range approach. I could get on board with that.
So these decks historically have basically only worked when you're able to kind of like pressure them and make them deal with the stuff that you're doing, and then you incidentally combo at some point.
Yes.
It's pretty similar to just like Splinter Twin and the Felidar Guardian combo decks. It's just like trying to assemble your combo, and that's all you're in on doing, is not really viable because, as you mentioned, it's so fragile compared to like so many things. And I guess like Skyclave Apparition also helps against Graveyard Hate, right? Like they're playing like Cage or maybe Soul Guide Lantern or whatever. It's like at least it gets it out of the way. So maybe that's a good idea. Maybe just instead of just like a pile of Corpse Knights and Blood Artists or whatever, is like maybe you just get some beaters in there too. I don't know.
Well, good news, Jerry. I built a lot of decks today. So let me tell you about my efforts to do exactly that. I went to a Mardu Vehicles isn't quite right because there's no vehicles in this deck, but calling out a lot of those key cards that Mardu Vehicles used to play and adding Esper Sentinel to the mix. So Esper Sentinel, Thraben Inspector, Bomat Courier, Scrap Heap Scrounger, some Nettle Cysts, which I think is a big pickup for this type of deck. Vesperlark picks up that very well. Just in terms of beating down and, returning Esper Sentinel and Thraben Inspector with your Vesperlarks that you're not really holding out on, or even Bomat Courier, that can be a really nice source of card advantage.
Esper Sentinel and Nettle Cyst, and you got me excited for this, but those are rares, Brian. I'm out of rares, man.
I'm also out of rares at this point. This is why I'm out of rares, because I did get excited about this deck. And this is fun.
Esper Sentinel just convinced me that I'm probably gonna have to spend like $200. This sucks.
Yeah, Esper Sentinel is a hell of a Magic card. But this deck is fine. But again, the bodies are just like a little bit behind everything else. And I was all about this until the first time someone hit me with a Magma Opus and Mizzix Mastery. And I'm like, well, that's just so much better than anything my deck could ever hope to do. And then you can try and play like this long grindy game at that point, but it's so hard to come back from. And
no, because you're supposed to have main deck Soul Guides, man.
That is a concession I would have had to make. And this particular list does not have them. I felt like I needed to be more aggressive, but you're just kind of treading the middle of the road when you do this Scrap Heap Scrounger stuff. Like, this was aggressive for Standard. It's not super aggressive for Historic. And I think you're right. I think you do need to disrupt what your opponent is doing in some way. Soul Guide Lantern, very fine way to do that. One of the hardest things about the Vesperlark combo, though, is that you give up access to Lurrus. And that is painful because Soul Guide Lantern plus Lurrus is such a strong combination.
It is, but a lot of that has to do with Soul Guide Lantern being like very low opportunity cost too. And when you're talking about, having some sort of artifact synergies like Nettle Cyst in your deck, it's not the worst thing, right?
It is not. It is not. And I will go back to the drawing board. Plenty of Soul Guide Lanterns in the sideboard of this deck, but like we said, it's time for main deck. So that's an approach I tried. That's trying to do a little bit more of that split identity thing. I also did a similar look around artifact-based stuff in Esper colors, but pretty hard focused on blue-white. So I could unlock Emery and I could unlock Thought Monitor, trying to go a little bit longer in those games. And then, Black Disruption, Inquisition, Thoughtseize. This one did have the main deck.
That sounds good Lanterns. Too.
They all sound good. I agree with you. These are all really exciting ideas, and they were all very okay. they didn't blow my mind. They were all okay, and I want to write more about these decks this week, and I think I'm going to, and I'll detail some of the problems I ran into. But like I said, a lot of it boils down to just how powerful the historic format is right now with the addition of these new cards, and it just felt like I didn't have my mix of cards right. I think it can get there. I'm not out on this combo entirely, but none of these decks felt really far beyond the curve. And one of the biggest problems I keep running into, I'm building this artifact deck now. So I have my Esper Sentinels, my Portable Holes, my Thraben Inspectors, and all these ways to get artifact value. And then there's this stupid Blood Artist in my deck that's like, it only fits with Vesperlark, and it's not doing anything else. And if there was some way to convert this combo to be on the artifact side of things, I think that's what we're missing. And maybe it's out there. Maybe I'm just blanking on like the piece I'm supposed to go to other than Blood Artist, because Blood Artist is a huge liability in these spots.
Yeah, it's just not a Magic card a lot of the time, which is super unfortunate. So I don't know, like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, it's like, all right, I could see this shell being good, and a lot of it is just like the artifact stuff, and then you just have like random Vesperlarks in your deck and Blood Artists, and like, yeah, well, maybe we just cut those. Maybe we just build an artifact deck,
I did that, actually. That is the next thing I did, because I realized like Vault Scourge was in the format, and there's just all of these very reasonable artifact creatures, and of course Nettlecyst that we mentioned before. But that setup was like Arcbound Mauser, Esper Sentinel, Portable Holes, Thraben Inspectors. You play a Blackstaff, Bomat Couriers, Vault Scourge, Scrap Heap Scrounger, all that glitters, Nettlecyst, Thought Monitor. Like, that's a very linear deck. Go ahead. I
would tell you to play a second Blackstaff, but I think you're out of wild cards. So.
No, I have 2 Blackstaffs. You're safe.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so, a very linear deck that doesn't really interact with the opponent all that much. Of course, post-sideboard, you can get your Memory Lapses or Mystical Disputes, whatever you need for the situation, and get a little bit more interactivity. But I was a little concerned with this deck just being a worse version of basically Orzhov Auras. I think like the SRAM engine might not be worth giving up because they present a pretty similar clock with a lot more resiliency. So the format would have to look a certain way before I would be wanting to play this deck over that.
That's fair. It's just like your cards are a little bit better individually, but yeah, you're certainly missing out on a lot by not doing Aura stuff. And like that deck's still very consistent.
Yeah, well, if there wasn't a redundant SRAM in the form of Spirit Walker, then I would agree with you 100%. But they do have enough redundancy at this point where it feels like they mostly get to do that thing even in the face of disruption. And you're right, individual cards are better here. And I think your sideboard games are probably going to be better with this deck. But I don't think you're doing game 1 quite as well.
Man, Nettlecyst is just Core Spirit Dancer and 3 auras all by itself. So I don't know. It
does feel like it sometimes. One last deck in this space.
This is that. Hold on, no, this is just like the perfect format for Nettlecyst, right? It's like it's kind of embarrassing in Modern, like would need a lot of help in Standard, and at that point it's probably a little bit too good. But like Historic, it just seems nice.
I mean, you've seen what these living artifacts can do. These equipments are extremely, extremely powerful. This one is no exception. We had it on our top 10 must-craft list, and I still think there's a reason for that. This card has a lot of potential in the format.
All right, last deck.
Last deck. And this is why there's a reason this is the last deck. So at this point, I'm like, I just want powerful cards in my deck. This is nonsense. And the most powerful card in this set, it's got to be Dragon's Rage Channeler. I mean, it's just such an overwhelming card. So now I hybridized basically, a Rakdos looking Dragon's Rage Channeler deck, all the stuff you would expect, Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Young Pyromancer, Village Rites, Dreadhorde Arcanist. So all these card advantage engines, the search you get from Dragon's Rage Channeler, and also you just have 4 Vesperlarks and 4 Davriel's Withering, and Vesperlark gets back your Dragon's Rage Channeler, it gets back your Dreadhorde Arcanist. So it's getting back a bunch of meaningful cards for you, and you can just backdoor this combo. And this is where I had the most success. Maybe besides zombies, that's arguable. But this is where I had the most success, just playing a different game plan and then being like, oops, you're getting Vesperlark now, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That sounds solid to me, but you still have Blood Artist in your deck, yeah?
I still have Blood Artist in my deck, yep. And you can't get away from that. That's the whole problem here. And, you have some Young Pyromancer synergy, which can occasionally matter. I'm not going to say it never comes up, but yes, Blood Artist is in your deck, and that is the core problem of the Vesperlark strategy right now. If you find a way to solve that, and like I said, the Zombies deck does that to some extent by doing it with a zombie instead, so you get some tribal synergy. You can turn on your Crypt Breakers, but as far as just quote unquote Vesperlark decks, I don't know. I don't know how you get over that hurdle of having to rely on Blood Artist.
I think you just need to play a ton of sack fodder or Return to the Ranks, Priest of Forgotten Gods. Like once you start leaning into that stuff, Blood Artist is like a little bit more palatable, but it's still not great.
Yeah, I wanted to do like a Sacrifice shell that also had Vesperlark combo, but that is such a meaty shell. It takes up so much space in your deck that it's really hard to slot something else alongside it.
Mardu, let's go.
Been working on it. When I have a final list, I will let you know. But like I said, it's hard to get all the pieces together. So I will continue to pound away. And it was such a small amount of time. I was frustrated by how little time we had because, like I said, I'm not off this combo. It has potential. It just didn't blow me away on day one. Like I kind of thought it was going to.
Yeah, I mean, like Vesperlark Withering is good. It's like having to have something else alongside it that's not embarrassing. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people have been making up for that with just having Collected Company. And it's like, well, maybe, this finds the Vesperlark and the crappy thing that we used to kill them, or it's like a Fauna Shaman that you can use to translate into a Blood Artist,
Mm-hmm.
and just gives you like a little bit more raw power. But yeah, I think like a company deck, probably with Fauna Shaman, that can also function as a reasonable aggressive deck would probably be a good place to go. Zombie seems fine. I guess it's okay with Blood Artist and Corpse Knight and all that stuff, but I would try and make those a little bit better. Like maybe just play Priest in your deck or Return to the Ranks or whatever. I don't know.
Maybe. Another interesting way to take this, and it's unfortunate because I don't think this is as viable online, is that you could just look to gain life and not worry about Vesperlarking and killing your opponent because you theoretically have access to infinite life, and then you could do Soul Warden, right? And the reason that's interesting to me is because you can find that with Ranger Captain of Eos. So now you can do things with Collected Company where you find like Ranger Captain, Vesperlark. You get to go find your Soul Warden and you protect on that next turn too, which seems really good to me. You could also do it in like a Soul Sisters type shell, since Vesperlark can return your Serra Ascendant if you were really going hard down that road and just doing hard life gain. So there's a bunch of interesting roads there too. But the problem is I don't know how much life you can really gain in that limited period of time. Like gaining 40 life is not really going to be meaningful. So
Heliod will kill them.
Heliod could kill them. That's true. And then, so with all the artifact stuff, at some point I was looking at like Arcanist Owl. So maybe there's something to combine Vesperlark, Arcanist Owl, all the artifact enablers. And like I said, so many roads to go down, and I want to explore them all, but I'm out of wild cards. So that was the end of my exploration. And that's when I started playing Dragon's Rage Channeler decks. And surprise, they're freaking awesome.
Well, let's both put down a couple hundo. Let's do it.
Nothing left to do. That's that. They got us. They got us again. Magic always wins.
I mean, it's a big set. Like, I would expect you to have to do this with a set like this or with a big set after rotation, and then maybe in the meantime you can just craft here and there or whatever. But
it is still annoying that I have to, if I wanted to like take the double shot, I have to play the Jumpstart format. And the way I'm probably going to do is just buy a bunch of packs of nonsense that I don't even need. So,
well, you could just gamble, right? You can just like buy, and then like they give you choices between the packs. So maybe you like try and spike the pack that you need or whatever. But that seems worse than buying boosters from a different set that you might need cards from and trying to open wild cards. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is I don't need, and I just don't need any other cards from other sets. They already got that money from me, so now they're just getting redundant money.
Yeah, I'm not full on every single set, so
mostly there.
DRC stuff is good, obviously. In case folks are wondering, there's a lot of good shells too. Like, is that
mostly what you did today?
Yeah. Is it Phoenix has been really good. Mono red, I think, is fine in a different set of circumstances. And I was super weak to Graveyard Hate, but you probably don't have to be. A lot of that is probably just like, maybe I'm not supposed to also be playing Dreadhorde Arcanist. Like, it's a good card, but
Yep.
realistically, it just walks you into the same stuff that you're already weak to. So, like, why are you bothering? I've seen some Hollow One lists get posted. I also had one of those in my article, which I wasn't thrilled about, but it definitely, fits the mold of what a DRC deck is trying to do and wants to do. So Is It Phoenix was really good. Your Grixis deck looked good, which was basically just like Is It splashing Lurrus and some K commands.
Correct.
Your mana base was ambitious. I think that you need some more black sources. I also think that there's probably no reason for you to not just be playing like, some Inquisitions or Thoughtseizes or whatever instead of, I don't know, like the random spell pierces that you had. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to splash Lurrus, you might as well commit.
Yeah.
I would just want those cards anyway.
I can't fault you for that. The reason I didn't do that route is because, like you said, my mana base felt ambitious. I didn't want to go the full set of shocks, not knowing like what kind of aggression is going to be present in the format. But maybe you do have to just make that concession. And the problem there too is that if you're doing that, then you probably are giving up like your Spire, Bluff, Canal slot, so you can still play the Fabled Passage. Because I do think you need to play Fabled Passage when you're playing Dragon's Rage Channeler. What do you think about that conclusion?
Depends on if you have looting or not.
Yeah, so I'm not playing for looting because we've talked a lot about how looting in Dreadhorde Arcanist decks is not exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for something that is card positive, not just card neutral. It gets a little bit better in circumstances where you have Dragon's Rage Channeler because it does such a good job of paying you back, once you establish Delirium. And of course, Unholy Heat is a big part of the equation too. So maybe I could go harder on Faithless Looting. Right now, my deck only has 2 copies, which I understand feels weird, but that's
fine.
About.
That's fine. A lot of my lists only had 2 copies too. If I was like Rakdos with some Croxes or whatever, and once you have things like Soul Guide Lantern in your main deck, that's a wild card, right? So like if you are missing land, that can substitute potentially. So
right.
It makes me like I would not have Fabled Passage in like a lot of my deck lists unless I thought that it was free or I wanted it anyway or needed to enable Fatal Push or whatever, right?
Right.
So I think that you playing 4 because of your mana, like how you wanted your mana to be, made sense. But I also think that if you're starting from scratch with a new format, you're like already trying to temper your mana base, assuming there's going to be a bunch of aggression. But I think that you just go as hard as you want and then pull back,
then adjust,
rather than like start in the middle.
No, I think that's a totally reasonable approach. That makes sense.
So yeah, I would get the passages out of your deck because like you're doing Lurrus stuff, right? So you had like 6 black shocklands, a swamp, and 4 passages, and once you get that basic swamp, then the passages don't do anything, and the swamp is not great with Expressive Iteration and Sprite Dragon if you actually do draw it. So it looked really awkward to me. You could potentially play like a Chromatic Sphere if you wanted to, but I think it's just worse than Soul Guide.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's it. I looked at your list and was like, this does look good. I would just want to add more black to it.
Okay. Noted. The games, though, I will tell you, felt great. They were exactly, big surprise. I love a Dreadhorde Arcanist deck. You know I love this style of play. But it felt like exactly what I wanted to be doing, running my opponents out of resources, kind of dictating their plays by virtue of my own aggression, setting up future turns. It was all there. And it felt exactly like Legacy Delver, if you're a fan of those approaches, and exactly how the modern Is It decks feel right now. So I was very pleased. And like, to the extent that I could see myself actually grinding ladder with this deck, I enjoyed games that much. And it's wild to think that if you just go back a month, this deck has Brainstorm as opposed to Opt. Like, you have got to be kidding me.
Well, we'll have the new one soon enough, which will be cool too.
Right. Yeah. And there was multiple times in deck building too, where I wondered if like, will I be playing 8 copies of that effect? And it's hard because, like I said, I think you should be backing away from the graveyard a little bit. And it's why in a lot of instances, I've kind of split my Dreadhorde Arcanist with Young Pyromancer. And certainly Dreadhorde Arcanist is a card I prefer, but I just think you need to have plans. Yeah, I just think you need to have plans for what's coming. And what's coming is a bunch of Soul Guide Lanterns. So you may as well get ahead of it.
Yeah. You compared it to like Legacy Delver. But what I actually saw was just my modern Grixis deck, where like
Sure.
you had the cheap early threats, but you just don't care about them because you're just going to crush them in the late game. But you get to have these things that give you free wins and allow you to get under your opponent, or even like do some blocking if you need to. They're just like super versatile, and Arcanist is a card advantage engine if it doesn't die. So it looks really good.
Deck does it all. I would give it my highest recommendation. It's the best thing I've came out with, and I think putting Gerry's observations into it and fixing the black a little bit, completely reasonable. I approve that as well.
Give it like 6 out of 5 raccoons.
That's as high of a praise as I could ever give anything. So yes.
Game.
Good luck.